The Jamaican economy is set to grow by 2% this year, with overall growth set to slow in 2025. That's according to the latest World Economic Outlook published by the World Bank. The report is projecting that average growth in the Caribbean will accelerate to 7.1% in 2024 and remain robust at 5.7% in 2025. However, this growth figure is based on the resource boom in oil and mineral-rich Guyana. Without this driving force, regional growth is set to come in at 3.9% in 2024. Growth in Jamaica is set at it's projected rather at 2% for 2024 and 1.6% in 2025. This is due to subdued private consumption growth. Growth in the region will be supported mainly by tourism, which has recovered from pre-pandemic levels and is expected to continue to improve. One of the attorneys representing Vybz Kartel and his three co-accused has urged the Court of Appeal to carefully consider how the recall of potential witnesses in the murder trial may be affected by the length of time that has elapsed since the original case against the men ended in 2014. John Clark raised the issue on day 2 of the retrial hearing on Tuesday.
Clark, who represents Kahira Jones, asked the three-judge panel to consider how the matter of witness availability would jeopardize the ability of Adidja Palmer, Sean Campbell, Andre St. John and his client to receive a fair retrial. The men's attorneys are urging the court to set them free in the interest of justice. Clark told the judges that witnesses may be unavailable, their memories may have become hazy, or they may be dead. He says such a possibility makes it undesirable to subject the men to a retrial. John Clark also warned that witnesses who have already testified and who now know what other witnesses said in 2014 may be influenced one way or another. The attorney says the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions has a burden to prove why, after the Privy Council had already explicitly said the men's right to a fair trial was breached, they should be subjected to another trial where there is a risk of similar breaches reoccurring. He says the prosecution has to justify why such a situation would be desirable. Clark maintained that the current justice system would likely subject the men to another unfair trial. He says the Constitution permits the men to approach the court where they believe their rights are likely to be breached. He also reminded the judges that the Charter of Rights and Freedom had shifted the burden from the citizen to prove that their rights were breached to the state to explain why the breach was demonstrably justified in a democratic society. The Clark will conclude his arguments this morning at 9:30. The prosecution is expected to open its case for a retrial today. The team is being led by Acting Director of Public Prosecutions, Claudette Thompson. Mahiri Stewart for Nationwide News.
President of the Jamaica Association of Hackney and Contract Carriages, Willard Costley, says normalcy should return to the public transport sector today. This follows a meeting between taxi associations and the Transport Ministry on Tuesday. Mr. Costley spoke to Cliff Hughes on Nationwide at 5 on Tuesday evening.
We should see the end of the withdrawal of service come tomorrow.
Well, we should, and I hope, and what I would say to all operators who is on demonstration or was on demonstration or still on demonstration, you can go back to work, but we ask you kindly to be responsible and act in the context of the rules of the road. Because if you continue to operate the way you're operating, you're only going to make it look bad on all of us.
The meeting follows the move by some PPV operators on Monday to withdraw their services. The disruption continued in sections of the country on Tuesday as some drivers remain upset at the move to suspend driver's licenses for those of their colleagues with 14 or more demerit points against their name. Mr. Costley says that concern was addressed.
We're satisfied with the development and the outcome of the meeting. What I can say to the industry that they were well represented today, and they can, if they are still off the work, they can go back to work, because what we did was really satisfactory for the industry. We have gone through the whole demerit issues, and we have dealt with it. The problem that they have, all of them, we go from one right down to the last one, and they were all dealt with. They were all dealt with. That was something. Decision was made on every point.
And there was consensus on every point.
On every point.
Oh.
And I want to know that some serious and some bitter left and right punch was going there, but we actually arrived at a conclusion.
Willard Costley, president of the Jamaica Association of Hackney and Contract Carriages. Meanwhile, the president of the Transport Operators Development Sustainable Services, TODS, Edgerton Newman, says PPV operators got a major win at Tuesday's meeting between the taxi groups and the Transport Authority. Speaking on Nationwide at 5 on Tuesday, Newman said a solution was reached on the vexed issue of PPV operators not being able to set down or pick up passengers at bus stops across the Kingston metropolitan area. Taxi operators have long complained about the fact that the law does not allow them to stop at bus stops across the city.
We could not stop at a bus stop as a taximan. You have to stop 40 feet from a bus stop. Now the bus stop's name, it is suggested, will be changed to PPV stops.
Okay.
That is good news for the taxi operators, not just in KMTR, but right across Jamaica, where we never have a taxi stop, and now we have a PPV stop.
Yes.
I think that's an excellent
So
move
all
by the
public
committee.
passenger vehicles can now stop at the bus stops.
Absolutely. That is what's on the table.
That's major.
Major. But we have to monitor that though, because 83 bus stop in Harbour Tree. Have mercy when the long bus come and many taxis want to stop there also. So we have to monitor some things that makes adjustment, but
Yes.
I think that is a major one for the team.
Edgerton Newman, president of the Transport Operators Development Sustainable Services. The Minister of Legal and Constitutional Affairs, Marlene Malahou-Fort, says while she supports calls for greater accountability among parliamentarians, she has doubts about the feasibility of impeachment and recall legislation. She raised the issue as part of her contribution to the sectoral debate in the House of Representatives on Tuesday. Siobhan Campbell tells us more.
Despite calls for impeachment and recall as part of Jamaica's democratic framework, the Constitutional Reform Committee, CRC, has rejected such recommendations. Legal and Constitutional Minister Marlene Malahou-Fort says ultimately some method of accountability will have to be addressed through other means.
Madam Speaker, we took into consideration repeated concerns expressed by the public about the lack of accountability among parliamentarians. In fact, I recall in my report to the Prime Minister and to the Cabinet advising that we will have to look at how we hold ourselves to account in a better way. We will have to look at the concerns of the people. Those concerns may not be addressed through an impeachment process or a recall process, but the people are demanding greater accountability from all of us.
The CRC rejected impeachment, noting the difficulty for someone so charged to receive a fair and impartial hearing due to the partisan nature of Jamaican politics. Mrs. Malahou-Fort says a recall mechanism would similarly be impaired by Jamaica's political system.
Because many do not associate the office of Member of Parliament with that of a legislator and lawmaker. They believe that you are the social worker, you're the father, the mother, the spouse, you name it. That you are there to meet their every need. And so, can you imagine if a Member of Parliament is called upon to perform a role that is not properly the Member of Parliament's? That you have done all that you should do, can do, and you're waiting for another part of government to do the work. But the angry mob in the constituents decide that you should be recalled. If the numbers are high, you could have 3 or 4 elections, by-elections, happening in a 5-year cycle.
The minister, also following the CRC recommendations, agreed that fixed election dates remain unsuitable for Jamaica. However, she supports greater certainty for election dates.
Fixing a specific date, the precise and inflexible date, may be problematic in a country like Jamaica. But it is still possible to introduce greater certainty as to when elections are held. This is a matter that we will have to continue to debate. No one who holds office after the people have voted should be afraid of the people.
Siobhan Campbell for Nationwide News.
The Press Association of Jamaica PAJ has condemned threats against television Jamaica journalist Giovanni Dennis. In a statement late on Tuesday, PAJ President Milton Walker called the threats an attack on press freedom. The threats against Dennis are related to an investigative report he prepared on illegal drag racing in Jamaica. Part 1 of the story aired on Sunday evening. In response to the story, a flurry of abusive social media content targeting Dennis emerged. The PAJ says it notes that the matter has been reported to the police. It's urging the lawmen to bring the full force of the law against the culprits involved. The PAJ is reiterating that journalists must be allowed to practice their craft free from fear and intimidation. It's urging journalists to be resolute in their pursuit of stories. PNP President Mark Golding has expressed sadness at the passing of former Speaker of the House, Violet Nielsen. Mrs. Nielsen passed away on Tuesday at the age of 91. Born on July 16, 1931, Violet Nielsen made history as the first female Speaker of the House of Representatives, serving from 1997 to 2003. She also served as PNP MP for East Central St. James from 1989 to 1997. Mr. Golding says Mrs. Nielsen was a beacon of strength and a true servant of the people. He says her pioneering spirit and contributions to Jamaica will never be forgotten. The PNP says Mrs. Nielsen's legacy will continue to inspire and guide it in its pursuit of a just and equitable society. US-based ride-hailing company InDrive has criticized the government's ban on ride-sharing applications as counterproductive and deeply alarming. In a statement to the media on Tuesday, the company says the ban undermines the rights of thousands of Jamaicans who rely on digital mobility choices. It says the government's ban exposes customers who rely on ride-sharing platforms to unnecessary risks. The company says the ban is not only detrimental to passengers, but also runs the risk of destroying the economies of families that rely on the platform to make a living. InDrive says it's urging the Jamaican authorities to join with it and other industry players where engagement in constructive dialogue can occur. The company says all stakeholders should be dedicated to ensuring Jamaicans have safe, reliable transportation options at their disposal. It says that stakeholders should also ensure actions do not jeopardize sources of income for thousands of families across the country. The Transport Minister Darrell Vaz has maintained the ban was necessary following concerns from the island's security forces about the unregulated nature of ride-sharing platforms in Jamaica. The Transport Authority has since indicated that the ban may be lifted for platforms that are compliant with existing transportation laws and regulations. The 7 contenders vying for the job of President-elect of the Jamaica Teachers Association, JTA, engaged in a robust debate at the organization's headquarters on Church Street in Kingston on Monday. Chief among the issues raised in the debate was the need to pay teachers a livable wage. Shalois Michael has the story.
With the one-year presidential term of Leighton Johnson coming to an end in August, the campaign is on to choose a new president-elect for the JTA. That chosen person will take up the mantle and carry on the duties of the organization for another one-year period. 3 women are among the 7 vying for the job. They are Dorian Allen Rainford, teacher of Convent of Mercy Academy in Kingston, Suzette Baker Tullo, principal of Fogo Road Infant School in Clarendon, and Georgia Gowdy Green, vice principal of St. James High School. The men are Mark Malava, principal of Yalas High in St. Thomas, Eaton McNamee, principal of Broadleaf Primary in Manchester, O'Keefe Saunders, teacher of Donald Quarry High in Kingston, and Jermaine Williams of Manning's School in Westmoreland. The issue of compensation was chief among the questions and answers for the candidates. When asked whether she would prioritize higher salaries for teachers or improved classroom infrastructure, Mrs. Allen Rainford says the obvious choice was a salary increase.
There is no question about it that higher salaries for teachers would be my priority. If the teachers are paid more, if the teachers are compensated based on their qualifications, based on their core competencies, and based on their abilities, what it means is that they can pay their bills, they can take care of themselves, and they can take care of their families. Once our teachers are paid properly, it means that they are not only able to have a livable wage and to survive. But they can take vacations. And instead of dropping down dead on the job because they are overworked, it means that they can actually take care of themselves. Our mental health is under attack.
Another candidate, Mrs. Baker Tulloh, is proposing a tax return for teachers at the end of each year.
Dr. Clark would have shown through his tax reverse credit that the principle is plausible, because those who's earning under 3 million, they can apply for a one-off 20,000. What the government can do is they can do it in a band where those in the 4 million would get a percentage of tax return. So the principle is there. Our income tax is extremely high. The principle can be applied to us. Why shouldn't it be?
Meanwhile, Mr. Williams is suggesting a one-off payment of $2,000 as an incentive to teachers who have served in the system for 10 years or more. That's a little over 311,000 Jamaican dollars.
Our education system needs our seasoned educators because they are the foundation. Our young teachers need mentorship. This is a proposal to the government, and I believe that there should be some reallocation of funds so these teachers would have served the sector for 10 years or more can benefit from this one-off payment of $2,000.
Shaloy Smichael for Nationwide News.
Overseas news now. Lebanon's Hezbollah fired a barrage of rockets into northern Israel on Wednesday to avenge the killing of a top commander. The incident further escalates regional tension as the fate of an internationally backed plan for a ceasefire in Gaza hangs in the balance. The retaliatory attack came as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was in the region to push a ceasefire proposal with global support that has not been fully embraced by Israel or Hamas. The militant group submitted its first official response late on Tuesday, requesting amendments to the deal. Hezbollah, an Iran-backed ally of Hamas, has traded fire with Israel nearly every day since the eight-month-long Israel-Hamas war began, and it says it will only stop if there is a truce in Gaza.